My name's Don.
And I'm Peter.
And we are two plebs talking about... California.
This week in the DPRC.
Sure enough. And as per usual, we're headed straight for our socialist communist joy fest, we'll say.
And also, as usual, contemplating about extending out to another day to cover everything.
Yeah. So, for those of you who are new, and that may be many of you.
Yeah, we have a few new peoples.
We have this problem around here for the Thursday show, where it's the only show of the week where we talk about two stories, and that's never enough stories.
Well, that's never enough time to cover all the stories we want to talk about.
Yeah. So there's 9 or something sitting up, open.
Yeah, basically, California dropped the bucket on us, and we had to pick the best nuggets.
Of which, right, not the least of them, is that we're going to nationalize the few remaining power companies.
Yes.
That are not already state entities around here. Because something, lower costs supposedly somewhere.
Right.
Well, as California will never learn, nationalizing things doesn't just suddenly make them cheaper and better.
No, it does not.
And the promise of these nationalizations will show you exactly why. So, there's a thing here in California, and I don't think this is a thing anywhere else, but if you are under PG&E, right, and a local municipality opens up a power company, you can swap from PG&E to your local municipality.
Right.
However, you still end up paying PG&E like $5 a month for, it's something like a year
existing.
Or two, right?
For existing.
No, because since we permitted this, like, whoever can just nationalize the area as soon as they want, PG&E said, well, look, you can't just forcibly take all of our business, you fucking jerks. And of the few times that a company has gotten something out of California went, okay, fine, you can still charge some surcharge, because California. And the answer to why not is because what we did when we created a couple of power companies here was not go, hey, we're standing in competition to SMUD, and oh, by the way, we're the government, so we can just win anyhow.
Right.
What we did is say, PG&E, you can't sell power here.
Okay, that's a little different.
Right.
That is, in fact, a complainable issue.
Right. And so the state went, well, if you're going to do that, then you have to permit PG&E to go, whoa, wait a minute. We just invested a bunch of money there, because that's always true.
Right.
Whether anybody wants to hear it or not, it's always true. They're always fixing something.
Yeah.
And so recoup some of that cost by charging like a $5 surcharge that will be collected by your new power company. And somehow or another, this at least vaguely sensible idea made it past the California state government. You know, if you're going to nationalize all of their shit, maybe you should pay them a little bit for having done so.
Right.
Not as much as they would have made, and not in any way going to sustain them.
Basically, give them the lube for their butt hurt.
Yeah.
You know, let's make sure there's some lube in there.
See? Exactly. And so we put in a few laws about this sort of thing years ago. I don't even remember when. But it doesn't really matter, because what we have done is thrown up 2 bills which will increase availability of nationalization.
Okay.
And because we're in California, neither of them make any sense, right?
Right.
Well, they're not bills, right? Because there's a California non-elected board that manages this.
Amendments to bills?
No, they're just propositions from the guys that regulate this across the state, right? And so, no, you don't get to vote on this, and neither do I.
Of course.
But to their own little cadre of he who knows better than both of us, there are 2 propositions on the table. And one will basically immediately nationalize all of the electric in California.
Okay.
Whether anybody intends it to or not. Because it's basically there's almost no cost, right? Like, it will increase the cost a little from what PG&E gets right now for nationalizing their shit, but there's no cost to the municipality to do it.
Oh.
They just go, that's ours.
Right.
Which, previously, much like eminent domain, which is basically the term they were doing this under, the government would have to pay you something.
Right.
It's questionable if they have to pay anything at all for nationalizing PG&E stuff under this proposal.
Well, if they're taking away all of PG&E's things to provide power, then they should.
Well, that would make sense, but
Like,
socialism.
Like, all these power lines and stations that are yours, and you have spent years investing money into building and maintaining, we're just going to take and go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
No, that sounds like California right there. No, that's not how it should go, but that sounds like California.
Yeah. And so that's basically the premise, right? And the other proposal, because there's not much difference besides these between them, is that PG&E will get a little bit more money, but there's like a negotiation process that will occur, which is to say that, well, a marketing campaign, right?
Right.
Which is to say that, municipalities will create their own competition to PG&E and not necessarily kick them out.
Okay.
Now, presumptively, they could do this under the first one, and that's the argument they always make.
Right.
Is, well, we will do things and we'll just be better than PG&E, right? And so people will migrate to us. And so under Proposition 2 here, right, they will actually have to fight for
customers.
Right. And
An actual competition.
right. But PG&E will get slightly more money under this, right?
How?
From the swap fee.
Ah.
Right.
Okay.
And either way, what this effectively says is the end of the E portion of PG&E. There will be no electric, right?
Right.
Because both of the arguments for doing this are, we're going to provide power that is cheaper, and it's going to be wind, solar,
Sustainable green
hydroelectric.
sources.
Right. Or at least more of it.
Right.
Now, you might think to yourself, there's simply not that much sustainable energy out there. How could they possibly do this? Certainly, when there is a scarce supply of something, it costs more.
Right.
So you can't just go, well, we're going to buy more expensive stuff and sell it for less. And you would be right under any business model other than the government's.
Because the government, for the most part, like, it costs this much, this is how much we're going to charge.
No. Right. So the government is notorious for going, it costs this much, this is how much we're going to charge.
Right.
Now, they do that in one of two ways. Either they borrow the money, Stockton,
Right.
or they throw in some sort of municipality tax. So Sacramento says we're going to do green energy only, right?
Right.
And they have to compete with PG&E. And so Sacramento's buying power for this, PG&E is buying power for this. Sacramento says, fine, we'll just sell the power here.
Right.
See, we win the competition. And then they go, well, everybody who lives in Sacramento, you now owe I don't know, it's not a property tax. It's a living in Sacramento tax of, 1% of whatever.
Yeah, a residency tax.
Sure, right. And that tax is going to pay to subsidize our municipal fucking power.
Right.
So, wonderfully, you are now paying for that cheaper power for Sacramento.
Right.
Than they are selling PG&E's power, whether you have their power service or not.
Right.
And so the only choice you're left with is, your cost of living just went up no matter what.
Right.
So the only choice you now have is not which service is better, but which service is cheaper.
Which will be the state-run one.
You got it.
Because they charge less. Since I'm paying more because of taxes, bring it back down to where I about even out.
And this is why the government wins these fights.
Right.
Every time. Because they can defer the cost onto everybody else.
Right.
PG&E cannot assess you a we like to sell power and fuck the government tax.
Right.
the local municipality can.
Right.
So, this is probably the end of PG&E. One way or another, right?
Yeah, that sounds like it.
Because, once again, everyone will end up paying for these local municipalities, and then something extra special is going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, you can't produce more power. You can't sell more power than there is, right?
Right.
I mean, this is a thing where it's pretty instantaneous, or as close as you get. We have this much power available. You can buy it. And California has done this to themselves before. You may or may not remember in both the 90s and early 2000s, we had rolling blackouts across the state.
Yes.
Where we were shutting down like whole cities.
No, I remember.
And this was blamed on power companies being greedy, even though like half the power companies by geographic area in California were local municipalities.
Right.
Who presumably are not greedy because they're the government. So says the government.
Right. And producing it at their absolute best.
Right. And yet, we still had rolling blackouts.
Right. Because we couldn't meet the demand.
Well, we could. We chose not to.
Why?
Well, so when you say 40% of my power will come from renewable things, if renewable things aren't producing enough power to meet the demand, and you have a government charter that says you have to have 40% of your power come from that, you can't then just go get more power, right? You can't go to the coal plant and go, could you just burn more coal, please?
Right.
You have to go to a wind turbine and go, would you please turn faster?
Spin more.
Turns out, that doesn't work.
No. More revolutions.
And so what did they do? The rolling blackouts.
Right.
They reduced the demand artificially. What do you think's coming after PG&E no longer supplies all this power?
More rolling blackouts.
You got it, right? And by the way, there won't be anyone to go to. Because what we did then, back in the 90s and 2000s, when California got pissed off enough, is that they went to PG&E and Nevada, the state of. And they said, we are a bunch of hippie progressives, but could you please just sell us some power? And PG&E went, yeah, okay. I mean, you're connected to the lines anyway. We'll sell it to you.
Right.
And the reason that this happened back then was price fixing, which will, in and governmental price fixing, right? We're going to lower the price of power and all these other sorts of things. So we ended up borrowing a boatload of money, which, by the way, you're still paying for, and so am I, to be able to buy this power from PG&E in Nevada, so that we could ease, because we didn't get rid of them, but we eased the rolling blackouts.
Right.
2020, maybe, this will be happening again.
Right.
Except that the big problem will be Gavin Newsom is almost 100% likely to be our governor.
Yes.
And Gavin Newsom is much less pragmatic about these sorts of things in relation to his crazy ideology than current Governor Moonbeam.
Oh?
Well, Governor Moonbeam at least responds to political problems, right?
Right.
Gavin Newsom, not so much.
Just does his own thing.
Which is why we got that new mayor of Frisco that went, we need a poo patrol, after Newsom had been there forever and was like, people are crapping on the streets, let's do it with them.
Right.
So, get ready, dear California. You're going to get your new rolling blackouts. Oh, and by the way, another thing is going to happen. When PG&E leaves your area, the price of your power bill is going to go up exponentially. Because the only place the monopoly rules actually apply is the government, right?
Yep.
Their big idea about, well, monopolies can just raise the prices however they want, doesn't happen in business anywhere.
No.
But when it is a government monopoly, it happens every time.
Because no one can tell them no.
You got it, right? And the only places it doesn't happen is where they haven't kicked out a private competitor.
Yep.
Because the private competitor goes, well,
I'm cheaper.
I don't need to do all their progressive crap, so how about cheaper power? But what ends up happening, right? Because I believe at least one of the two of us lives in a place where you hypothetically could get specifically PG&E, and a local municipality, right? Potentially. And that sort of keeps the one of our power bills slightly lower than the others. And neither of which are cheap, by the way. My power bill is ridiculous. In fact, I think it's about $300 bucks a month ish.
Yep.
So, anyway, but it's going to be great because all of the places that are left that PG&E controls power for, by the way, northwestern, just Northern California, really, right?
Okay.
Well, the northwestern portion of California, bunch of progressive douchebags.
Right.
So they're already out there selling the idea that they're gonna
solar farms.
Yes, all this kind of stuff. Which, by the way, northwestern California, bad place for solar farms. But far be it for me to say so.
Nah. It'll work out.
Sure.
We're being progressive.
What are clouds?
Turbines.
Where are you going to put them? But those are all problems for another day.
Yes.
So I can't wait, by the way, for all of this to happen, and both California, the state, and Californians, the citizens, to be surprised when there are rolling blackouts in the early 2020s.
Right.
Because they're coming.
Yes, they are.
So, as much as I enjoy knowing that we're going to destroy our lives, unfortunately we do need to move on a little bit, because just describing that took too goddamn long.
Yes, it did.
Well,
we just used most of the show for that one topic.
We did.
All right, so make it quick.
Well, we'll just run along.
Okay, that's good. We need that sometimes.
So, moving along quickly, under the pretense that we don't have a whole hell of a lot of time left.
No, we don't.
I think we've talked a couple of times about how upset we are about the census around here.
Yes, there's all kinds of people just pissed off about the census for some reason.
A couple of reasons, right?
Right.
One, the anti-Trump narrative means that Latinos and homeless are not going to respond to census takers, as though the illegal immigrant community's ever been big on talking to census takers, or there was a realistic response out of the homeless population anyway.
I mean, I didn't know they tracked homeless people down to get census information from them.
Yeah.
Because they sure as hell aren't mailing them the packet.
You know what I mean? Like, what are you just going to the nearest park and throwing a bunch in the air and hoping?
Apparently.
And so there's this premise that census takers are walking around and they're going to go see people individually and be like, "Excuse me, homeless man Bob.
All right.
Are you homeless?"
Right. Okay. As I understand it, how it works is they randomly pick addresses and mail the material out to them. And then if they don't get it back within a certain amount of time, they start sending notices saying, "Hey, it's the law," or "We're going to send someone to your house, a census taker, to get the information." And
so, basically, I mean, it works a little different occasionally, but that's the premise, right?
Right.
And so, now we're worried that the people who normally don't respond to a census are not going to respond to a census.
Okay.
So, shocking.
Shocking that the people who normally don't participate in the census are not going to participate in the census this time around.
However, relevantly, we're also afraid of this "are you a citizen" question.
Why?
Because the last census, we didn't have that question. Seems to really just be what it comes down to.
But it's been on the census before. The census changes. It's an ever-changing thing. It's not consistent.
Well, it doesn't change all that much, honestly. But
it does change a little bit.
Well, and since we've been taking it, yeah, it's changed a few times. But for some reason, this time, we're under the impression that this question is going to change all the things.
Well, it shouldn't. In our age of identity politics, we now need to have every single demographic fucking I's dotted and T's crossed, taken care of and accounted for. And that includes those who are not citizens.
Well, so herein is the problem, right? This is what they're worried about, is that there are a substantial quantity of illegal immigrants here. So if the executive branch goes, well, not citizen no county for government things that rely on the census, California could get kicked a little bit in the balls, and they're very afraid of that.
How so?
Well, there is a suggestion that there are anywhere up to 10 million illegal immigrants in the state of California.
Okay.
Now, that number seems a little high, but it's possible. However, there is a much more reasonable number. It's like 1.5 million, right?
Okay.
Which, I don't know actually if that's any more reasonable. Chances are good it's more than that.
People can't agree on how many people who are here illegally because they can't get a good number on the people who don't want to say who they are.
Exactly. Shocking. But, look, chances are good it's somewhere between 1 and 10 million.
Right. There's a large number.
Right. Well, so we're running at a 38 million population-ish, right? So if that's 3.8 million people, right, between 1 and 10, that's 10% right off the top.
Right.
Now, this affects how many votes you get in the House.
Right. No, I'm catching it now.
This affects your electoral college count. This affects how much money you get from the feds. This affects all kinds of shit.
Oh, that's why they like all these people hanging out then.
Right?
Gotcha. It gives them overall more governmental power.
Yes.
And it gives them more federal money.
Yep. Shockingly, right?
So yeah, I can see why they wouldn't want the census to divulge that.
Could cause California a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
And this is why we got the lawsuit from the state of California.
Right.
This is why we've got people, protesting and running around saying ridiculously, and I can't say this enough, how ridiculous this is. There are California government officials that are trying to get illegal immigrants to not open the door to anyone that works for the federal government except a census taker. As though that's possible. But this is the premise, right?
Right.
That way, you can't get deported, but you'll be counted on the census. Which definitely won't tell ICE where you live.
No, it won't. Because they randomly generate that through addresses. So, ICE can't just say, I need your records.
Well, so they can, right?
Right.
But, this is the problem. And look, whether or not they'd actually legally be able to is another thing, but this is the premise of the problem they're having. Because, as per normal, California will have its cake and eat it too.
Of course.
We will have illegal immigrants who cannot be deported, but do get us increased federal funding. Oh, and votes in the House.
Wow, this is starting to sound a lot like a really old argument that happened a very long time ago in this country. Three-fifths compromise?
A compromise of some variety.
Yeah. What did that lead to?
Nothing.
Nothing significant in our history whatsoever.
Not at all. So...
There's no flags that we complain about associated with that.
No, none. Literally
Or
none.
statues that we're knocking down associated with that.
Not at all. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
I don't know what land of fiction you live in. Anyway, moving along quickly. So, we're now, and I can't even explain how ridiculous this is, I'm pretty sure. We're now forming both advocacy groups in like a private sense and governmental agency outreach that is trying to figure out a good way to make sure that illegal immigrants get counted on the census and equally don't get deported.
Well, they just have to identify themselves on the census. So they'll get counted on the census as someone not to count for electoral votes and
right.
federal money.
And so this is where it gets exceptionally ridiculous, right? Because someone started doing math on this and went, look, even if we only lose like 1.5 million-ish
Right.
off of everyone who physically lives here,
Right.
we could lose a House seat.
Right.
Like, gone.
That. Done.
Which, dear rest of the country, I know you all want. Let's be honest.
Well, with the way things have been going, I'm not opposed to that.
I don't blame you either, right? Like, we're pretty ridiculous around here. One of the few things that I don't think anyone is pay any attention to, but probably should, is this would be a forcible redrawing of districts.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to lose a Republican seat. That's what's going to happen.
Right.
Right. Because Orange County, which has been roughly the same size since forever, basically props up Nunes, right? That's the reason he's there. He's going, right? Because they'll get attached to like some portion of liberal shithole,
right?
And that'll be that.
The gerrymandering will happen.
Yeah. Though the left never does that. I don't know what you're talking about. That's a right wing thing.
No,
that's that.
Everybody does it. Shut up. Both sides have done it. Fuck up.
Anyway, so even if it's not gerrymandering, the reality is there's just a lot of crazy lefty nut bars around here. So you could probably just draw squares, and as long as you drew them, even vaguely square-shaped, you'd probably end up de-seating a Republican House.
Chances are,
right?
They'll figure out a way to even it back out in their favor.
Exactly, and
get rid of the Republicans because they're really hoping for the blue wave to hit California.
Yeah. If only California could be more blue. I don't think so.
No.
Anyway, but that's what's going to happen, right? But I don't think anyone is taking the time to think about what happens if it's closer to that 10 million, right?
Right.
Because therein will be the real question. If this comes out as California is supposed to have a population of 38 million and 7.5 million people are on the census as illegal immigrants, so we're only counting 31 million people. It's entirely possible we lose like 2 House seats,
right?
3 electoral college votes, kind of thing,
right? A lot,
somewhere in that vicinity, right? Like this could severely kick California's influence over the country in the penis, which I'm okay with,
right?
But for anyone who is wondering why it is that we're so panicked about this is why, right? Because for all any of us know, by the way, it could be worse than this. We do know that people have been leaving California en masse for a long time.
Right.
Now, presumably, a majority of those at some point were U.S. citizens. I mean...
Right, yes.
Pretty likely. At some point, most of California was U.S. citizens.
Right.
On the other hand, California's population has been growing at a steady rate. And people are not moving to California
as we have found from other news reports.
This population's got to be coming from somewhere.
Right. U-Haul can't get the trucks back in because no one's moving into California.
Right.
But we're having a steady population growth. So people are either breeding like fucking rabbits.
Which just isn't happening, right? We have information about that. That's not happening.
Or they're creeping in from from another country.
It's the short list, right?
Because they're not coming in from another state.
Either that,
U-Haul wouldn't be having a problem.
Either that, or Sacramento's got a genie down there where they go, create more Democrats. And if they had that, other than illegal immigration, they'd be using it for places other than California. Come on.
Cloning's illegal.
I don't know if that'll matter soon. But look, in the event that nobody has any idea, which is the case, right? But in the event that this is closer to the 10 million figure, as opposed to that 7.5, we could lose, what is that? A third of the population on paper?
Right.
Or closer to a quarter. But a quarter of the population on paper, and since House seats, electoral college votes are based on population, the likelihood is we would lose a quarter of each of those.
Right.
Which would take us down from 55 to, what is that? Like 42?
Right, something like that.
Give or take. Now, if California isn't 55 electoral seats across the nation for electoral college, 55 House votes, on and on and on and on, right? The left loses a lot of sway in this country.
Yes, it does.
And this is why you're seeing lots and lots and lots of help coming to California to try to stop this.
Gotcha. No, I see it now.
Because, as per usual, when California tries to set a progressive agenda, they need the ability to subsidize what they're doing through other states.
Gotcha.
So, dear everyone, not in California,
Right.
or those on the right in California. Now's the time to go tell Trump and the census and everybody else, yes, do this.
Right.
Because we could dethrone California as the progressive leader of the universe that fast.
The question's there. I've already done the census.
And that's the end of our show for the day.
That's right. It's taco time.
However, before we go, we'd appreciate it if you shared us around.
You can find us on YouTube,
BitChute,
Facebook,
Twitter,
Patreon,
and Maker Support.
Thanks for stopping by.